In the month of April 2024, NASA scientist Chad Green climbed aboard a Gulfstream 3 aircraft to launch a research flight over the icy expanse of Greenland. The team aboard the research aircraft was tasked with testing the limits of their new uninhabited aerial vehicle synthetic aperture radar system, or UAV-SAR. This sophisticated radar system was intended to test how well it could penetrate the ice and offer detailed new maps of its internal layers and the bedrock beneath. As the Gulfstream 3 aircraft flew approximately 150 miles east of Pitufik Space Base, the team observed typical geological formations beneath the frozen surface. However, as they continued, they noticed an anomaly appearing on their radar screens. Instead of the usual natural ice formations, the UAV-SAR data displayed a series of geometric patterns, linear and rectangular shapes that contrasted sharply with the organic formations typically seen in glacial ice. These structures looked artificial, buried under 100 feet of ice. At once curious and caught off guard, the scientists saved this data to examine it more closely upon their return to base, where they could refine the images to uncover additional details. Examining the images back on the ground, the outlines of an underground complex were clear to see. These radar images revealed a labyrinthine network of subterranean tunnels connecting various facilities and structures underground. The team, fully captivated by this mystery, turned to declassified U.S. Army Corps of Engineer documents, seeking answers about the true nature of their discovery. By cross-referencing the coordinates and the structural layout with historical records, the team made a surprising discovery. They were staring at the remains of Camp Century. The existence of Camp Century itself wasn't a secret, but was that all they were looking at? Established in 1959, it had been publicly presented as a research facility and a demonstration of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers' ability to construct and maintain military outposts in the harsh Arctic environment. Photos and descriptions of the base, powered by a nuclear reactor and boasting a network of tunnels carved into the ice, were even featured in publications like the Saturday Evening Post, advertising Camp Century as a peaceful polar research station. But in the decades since its decommission, the surface level of the base has become submerged and buried under 100 feet of ice and snow. But what the NASA team saw on their radar was far more extensive than the research station advertised as Camp Century. Parallel structures were aligned in a manner that suggested tunnels stretching out into a network that seemed to extend far beyond the publicly known boundaries of Camp Century. Hidden beneath the veil of Camp Century's typical ice core sample studies and Arctic scientific research lay a top-secret Cold War endeavor known as Project Iceworm.
You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
This audacious and clandestine program was kept secret from even the Danish government that granted permission to the US for construction of the base, and it aimed to create a network of nuclear missile launch sites under the Greenland ice sheet. The Arctic, with its proximity to both the US and the Soviet Union, had become a strategically crucial region.
Modern men from cities like Dallas and Atlanta, men from states like Oregon and New York, men from Denmark and the United States have learned also to live in the Arctic. They have moved in to build, maintain, and operate the most spectacular warning systems in the world.
The shortest route for intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, between the two superpowers lay over the North Pole, making Greenland a prime location for military installations. Beneath Camp Century, in secret, specialized nuclear payloads, codenamed Iceman missiles, were installed with the capacity to launch through the ice sheet to strike Soviet territory at a moment's notice. In 1951, the United States and Denmark signed an agreement granting the US permission to establish air bases in Greenland. The notable Thule Air Base was a sprawling facility with strategic bombers and early warning systems constructed in northwestern Greenland, and marked the beginning of a significant US military presence on the island. However, Thule Air Base, despite its importance, had its limitations. Especially limiting was that its location was known to the Soviets, making it a likely target in the event of a conflict. Furthermore, the range of early ICBMs was limited, requiring launch sites relatively close to their intended targets. Project Iceworm, conceived in this context, was seen as the perfect solution to these challenges. By burying launch sites deep within the Greenland ice sheet, the US hoped to create a hidden and mobile nuclear arsenal, capable of launching a devastating surprise attack on the Soviet Union, should the need arise. The plan, as outlined in a 1960 Army document titled Strategic Value of the Greenland Ice Cap, was staggering in its ambition and scale. It's difficult to overstate the sheer complexity and difficulty of constructing Camp Century in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth, far from easy resupply. But Project Iceworm envisioned something on an altogether new scale of radical engineering. A network of tunnels spanning an incredible 2,500 miles, an area 3 times the size of Denmark itself. This subterranean web would house launch sites for 600 nuclear missiles, establishing a hidden arsenal capable of striking targets deep within the Soviet Union. The base itself was deep inland, quite far from any settlements on the coast, where winter is a constant night. Temperatures plummet below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and well over 100-mile-an-hour winds are recorded. Although Camp Century housed between 85 to 200 soldiers while in use, an already impressive feat, Project Iceworm, should it have been completed, would have demanded a workforce many times larger, involving engineers, construction crews, support staff, and security personnel, all while battling with the ever-encroaching elements. Keeping this massive operation supplied in the harsh Arctic environment would have been an unprecedented feat of engineering, financing, and sheer hard-minded determination. Not to mention the morale challenges of having thousands of Americans living day in and day out in dark, freezing tunnels 2,500 miles from American soil. Building a stable and functional tunnel network within the moving ice sheet also required innovative solutions. The constant shifting and deformation of the ice was discovered to pose a significant structural challenge, as evidenced by the deformation observed at Camp Century within just a few years of its construction. Additionally, the success of Project Iceworm hinged on keeping it absolutely hidden from Soviet detection. The ice sheet's thickness provided natural cover, but the constant movement of personnel and equipment, along with the disposal of waste, and the ever-present risk of spies, posed many risks of exposure. This need for absolute secrecy led to paranoia and mistrust, not only within Camp Century, but also between the US and Denmark. The nation of Denmark has a long history as a seafaring country, with a strong presence in the North Atlantic region for centuries. Greenland, centuries after being settled and then abandoned by early Norsemen, became a Danish colony in the 18th century. Greenland's location in the North Atlantic made it strategically important during World War II and the subsequent Cold War. Its proximity to North America as well made it an important link in the defense chain against potential Soviet aggression. After World War II, the US and Denmark signed a defense agreement in 1951, granting the US permission to build and operate military bases in Greenland, including Thule Air Base. But relations between the US and Denmark were about to receive a new shock. On January 21st, 1968, a US B-52 bomber carrying 4 nuclear bombs crashed near Thule Air Base, an event that became known as the Thule Incident. The crash resulted in the detonation of the conventional explosives in the bombs, dispersing radioactive materials over the ice. This incident not only exposed the clandestine presence of US nuclear weapons on Danish territory, but created an active nuclear hazard zone. The very nature of Project Iceworm, with its potential to turn Greenland into a sprawling US military fortification and nuclear battleground, understandably raised concerns within the Danish government. Although, like many Western European nations, the true ability for Europe to refuse cooperation with the US was highly limited. The amenities at Camp Century include a library, a barber shop, a chapel, and even a movie theater. These were intended not just about maintaining morale, but served a dual purpose. By creating a semblance of normalcy, the US hoped to further conceal the base's true purpose. The genuine scientific research, such as ice core drilling, also provided a plausible cover story for the base's existence. The unceasing movement and shifting of the ice, a natural process driven by gravity and the weight of the ice itself, proved to be an unstoppable entropic foe. Tunnels and trenches began to deform and collapse under the immense shifting pressure, making the base increasingly unstable, non-functional, and unsafe for its inhabitants. Ultimately, the engineering challenges of the environment and the shifting geopolitical landscape proved insurmountable for what the US was willing to invest. By 1966, it was decided that Project Iceworm was an impractical and ultimately doomed endeavor. The US Army, faced with these challenges, made the final decision to abandon the program. Camp Century was decommissioned in 1967, along with the nuclear reactor removed and shipped back to the United States. However, given the remote location and crumbling state of the base, the US Army chose to simply leave behind the vast majority of the base's infrastructure and waste. An estimated 20,000 liters of chemical waste, including fuels, polychlorinated biphenyls, and radioactive coolant, along with untreated sewage, were left buried in the ice. The assumption was that the relentless snowfall would bury these remnants forever, sealing them deep within the ice sheet and rendering them harmless. For decades, Camp Century lay dormant, a ghost of the Cold War, entombed in ice. The world moved on, the threat of the Soviet Union subsided, and the secrets of Project Iceworm faded into obscurity. The rediscovery of the remains of Camp Century, slowly being crushed by millions of pounds of ice, comes at a time when Greenland's strategic importance has reignited discussions between the United States and Denmark, occasionally leading to diplomatic incidents. A notable point of tension occurred in August 2019, when US President Donald Trump expressed interest in purchasing Greenland outright. This proposal was met with firm rejections from both Greenlandic and Danish officials, with Greenland's Pierre Kim Kielsen stating that the island was, quote, not for sale, and Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen labeling the idea as, quote, absurd. In response, President Trump canceled his scheduled state visit to Denmark. While Denmark retains control over Greenland's foreign and defense policies, Greenland has been gradually increasing its autonomy since the establishment of Home Rule in 1979 and Self-Rule in 2009. This evolving dynamic has led Greenlandic officials to assert more influence over decisions affecting its territory, including those related to foreign investments and military activities. In response to growing geopolitical interest in the Arctic, Denmark has now sought to strengthen its presence and cooperation in the region. In November 2024, Denmark's Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen visited Greenland to discuss Arctic security with Greenland's Defense Minister Vivian Motzfeldt. These discussions aim to address global security concerns and enhance defense cooperation between Denmark and Greenland. At the end of 2024, Denmark announced a new $1.5 billion military spending package for the Arctic. But at the start of 2025, then President-elect Donald Trump reiterated his goal to secure Greenland, even mentioning the possibility of economic sanctions on Denmark. Additionally, the United States has updated its Arctic strategy, putting more weight on strengthening surveillance and military rearmament to deter threats from Russia and China. Of course, it begs the question, if we are only discovering the long-dormant remains of Camp Century today, could there be other facilities out there below the ice or stone or sea, abandoned or active, and how ambitious are these bases today? Furthermore, will we see the rise of the Arctic as a new battleground for geopolitical control and resource extraction, with seemingly no clear end to NATO and Russian Federation strife? Could the interest in buying Greenland in particular be a move from the United States to consolidate its Arctic power, with the potential for renewed military development in the vein of a new Project Iceworm? A special thank you to my ongoing Patreon supporters, On and Trad Historian,